What's up, everybody? Welcome to the fourth episode of the Caffeine, Sarcasm, and Insanity podcast, now on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. This is where we talk about tech issues, business issues, and just sometimes I might go off on a little bit of a tangent just because it's fun. I am Chris Ruggieri, also called the Knee Account Phoenix. Before we begin, please like, share, comment, subscribe, etc., so we can help make this channel grow and I can create more content for all of you beautiful people out there. The obligatory legal disclaimers: everything I say or print is just my own personal opinions, observations, calculations, and predictions. It is not intended as legal advice. Any articles that I reference will be in the descriptions, and as always, everything I do is powered by caffeine, sarcasm, and insanity. Now that that's out of the way, today I break the cardinal rule. Mark the day, people. Today I'm going to cross way into the political. In particular, why politics has no business in business. That is to say, why politics and corporate don't mix. I'm going to give two examples from each of the two major sides in the U.S., liberal and conservative. On the conservative side, we have Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A. On the liberal side, we have Bud Light and Dick's Sporting Goods. So for the past few episodes, I've been saying not to plant your flagpole, and I've skirted around different, little political issues. And now you're going to see why. Starting with Chick-fil-A. First of all, I want to say this. This fat man likes Chick-fil-A. Spicy Chicken Deluxe? Hells yes. Do I agree with all their stances? No. Do I like their food? Yes. Chick-fil-A has had a long stance of donating to organizations that are opposed to same-sex marriage. That, of course, has sparked many debates and protests against their ideology. In 2019, Chick-fil-A stopped donating to other organizations that criticized their stance of not donating to organizations that support same-sex marriage. Well, now, Chick-fil-A is a privately held company, so this is going to be a little tricky, but because they're a privately held company, we can't exactly put a dollar amount on how much revenue was lost. But with the articles I'm going to show you, we all know that there's going to be some lost revenue. Protesters rally at Chick-fil-A opening in Toronto over the owner's record on LGBTQ issues. Scroll down a little bit. They had an advertisement on the side of their building that says, "Hi Toronto, it's our pleasure to serve you." In front of that, on the sidewalk in colorful sidewalk chalk, someone wrote, "Your money supports hate." There were other signs from protesters that literally said, "Cluck off." Obvious pun there. Scroll down a little bit further. I'm not the only one who thinks this way. Just wanted, kind of why I'm bringing this in here. But others in line said they were there for the chicken. "I'm here because the food is good," said Hanan Mohammed, sipping a frozen lemonade. "Everyone has their own views, and we should be able to eat what we want." Mohammed had eaten at the franchise in several U.S. cities, including Atlanta, where it is based, and she arrived around 9 a.m. and stood in line in Toronto for about an hour and a half, but said it was worth it. She also said she disagrees with the company's stance on LGBTQ issues, but that only bad customer service experiences would make her not want to eat there. So I'm not the only one who disagrees with the political stance of the organization, but still likes the food. This fat guy loves food. I am never going to be a skinny man. And then we have this article from the BBC. This is kind of almost an intro into the second little controversy that's there, but where I was talking about Chick-fil-A decided to stop donating to other organizations that criticize their stance or that pulled too much political heat, for lack of a better term. This article from the BBC, November 19th, 2019. It's changing its charitable giving practices as a whole because they've been criticized by LGBTQ activists. The restaurant company, and this is a direct quote for those that are not on the video, the restaurant company has faced protest over its opposition to same-sex marriage, including donations to campaign groups. It said its giving would now focus on education, homelessness, and hunger. The firm did not explain the decision except to say that it wanted to offer more clarity about its donations. It also revealed a list of recipients for 2020 donations, which did not include two U.S. organizations, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and the Salvation Army, both of which have come under criticism over their policies on homosexuality. I'm going to get a little bit deeper into my personal beliefs on that later on. Probably not going to be what you expect, though. The full second controversy here. Chick-fil-A became a target, ironically enough, from the conservative side of the political spectrum because they implemented a diversity, equity, and inclusion program. Again, the conservative side, which I find hilarious. Honestly, I find it hilarious because the ones that are super upset about it, if they were to actually read the DEI initiative Chick-fil-A is implementing, they would see that literally nothing is changing. They are still hiring qualified, intelligent, your typical happy, smiley, customer-focused individuals that you expect to see at literally every Chick-fil-A. I mean, seriously, go to any Chick-fil-A. The staff will always greet you with a smile on their face and an almost infectious, happy, and positive attitude. But because they added the phrase DEI, conservatives are just losing their minds. I mean, Heath Ledger put it perfectly. You say the word woke or DEI and...
well, then everyone loses their minds.
And for anyone interested in reading Chick-fil-A's DEI policy, I've included that link below, but I wanted to highlight one thing right here. Chick-fil-A restaurants have long been recognized as a place where people know they will be treated well. That goes back to that happy, infectious attitude I was talking about. Modeling care for others starts in the restaurant, and we are committed to ensuring mutual respect, understanding, and dignity everywhere we do business. These tenets are good business practice and crucial to fulfilling our corporate purpose. That came from Eric McReynolds, VP, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at Chick-fil-A. Now here's why that's such a big statement for me. These tenets are good business practices. Treating your employees with respect, understanding, and dignity will translate into treating your customers with respect, understanding, and dignity. Yeah, that's kind of how you build a business. Next up on the example list, we've got Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby is a chain of arts and crafts stores known for its conservative Christian values. And in 2014, Hobby Lobby was involved in a highly publicized legal battle regarding the Affordable Care Act's contraceptive mandate. Company's owners, the Green family, objected to providing certain forms of contraception to their employees through their health insurance plans based on religious grounds, specifically citing opposition to contraception they believe could induce abortions. I don't think that's their call. But let's dig into the articles a little bit. Let's see the backlash from it. Protesters against the Supreme Court ruling because, yes, Hobby Lobby took the case to the Supreme Court, arguing that the contraceptive mandate violated its religious freedom, and the Supreme Court agreed. They ruled in favor of Hobby Lobby, stating that closely held corporations could claim religious exemption from certain regulations under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And while that decision was hailed as a victory for Hobby Lobby owners and aligned with their conservative values, it also generated significant controversy and backlash. Hence, protests at the Burbank location. Protesters are literally handing out condoms, which I thought was kind of funny. Again, do I support the decision? I could care less. It's not my... doesn't affect me. But one thing I wanted to point out is prior to the event, supporters were encouraged to dress up in an IUD or condom costume. Go a little farther into it. Let's condemn Hobby Lobby at their Burbank grand opening. This was actually from NBC Los Angeles, which, again, hilarious to me. But there was a second one. Now, this was obviously a single store. I don't believe it says where. But a Twitter user, now X, thank you, Elon, Kari Breck, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and if she sees this and I did not pronounce that, I'm sorry, shared a post. This is back in September of 2020, showed a Hobby Lobby display of decorative letters arranged to spell out USA Vote Trump. Now, I'm going to say this. Did Hobby Lobby do this? Did a customer do this? Because I've seen customers do some really funny stuff with moving letters around. This is why I've been saying for the last 3 episodes, don't plant your flagpole. Because the moment you do, you are the enemy of the other camps. Whether this is a customer that did it, whether it was... I mean, if you look at the letters behind them, is it possible? Yeah. I mean, there's a V between the T and the R right there. In case anybody's wondering what I'm talking about, let me go back to it. And unfortunately, you won't be able to see this in the little space that is Apple Podcast, but right there is another V. Honestly, to me, it looks like a customer did it, but because they're not uniformly spaced, and I know some Hobby Lobby employees would have lost their minds over that. But regardless, the boycotts and negative publicity had a lot of impact on Hobby Lobby's business, at least in the short term. Decline in foot traffic at the stores, protests, criticism from various quarters. And again, it's very challenging to quantify the exact financial impact of those controversies because Hobby Lobby is privately held, so you don't see their financials. But it does illustrate how what can be considered right-wing conservative decision made for ideological reasons can affect a private company's business operations, reputation, and bottom line. So that wraps up the conservative political decisions and how they affected those two organizations. Pardon me. Granted, one of Chick-fil-A's decisions could be considered more liberal if you look at the DEI program, but if you actually read it, it doesn't make sense. The fact that the program changed nothing around their traditional Christian principles still keeps them squarely on the conservative side of the spectrum. So let's jump into the liberal political decisions and those ramifications, because Dick's and Bud Light are both publicly traded, so we can get a lot more detail out of those. In response to the Parkland school shooting in 2018, Dick's Sporting Goods made the significant decision to remove all, and I'm using air quotes for those that cannot see the video. Thank you, Apple, for not having videos. on podcasts, assault-style rifles and high-capacity magazines from their stores and to stop selling firearms to customers under the age of 21. Now, I used air quotes around the assault-style part of that because there's no clearly defined or clear definition at all of what exactly assault weapons are, which shows a pattern. If you look at the SEC's disclosure ruling, materiality, not clearly defined, especially when it applies to tech. Showing, again, our lovely federal government is kind of has that pattern of not clearly defining something so that they can move the goalpost to wherever the current regime thinks it wants to be. But, again, sorry, tangent. Sometimes I go on a tangent just because it's fun. The company CEO, Ed Stack, who is known for his outspoken stance on gun control, he took additional steps, including removing all guns and ammunition from many of its stores. Bear in mind, federal law allows rifle sales to anyone 18 or older and pistol sales to anyone over 21, provided they're not a felon. Now let's take a look at what impact this had on the business. They saw some immediate financial repercussions, temporary stock price decline, concerns about potential revenue losses from the hunting and shooting sports category, which constituted a notable part of their sales. In the second quarter of 2018, after this policy went in, Dick's Sporting Goods reported that same-store sales, try saying that 5 times fast, same-store sales had dropped by 4% year over year when you compare it to 2017. And they're partially attributing that decline to their decision to exit the hunting business in certain stores and to change all the changes in the firearm sales policy. For the entire fiscal year of 2018, Dick's Sporting Goods saw total sales slightly decrease from $8.6 billion in 2017 to $8.4 billion in 2018. Think about that for a minute. $200 million right there. Poof. That's going to come back into that number. It's going to come back into play later. Despite those losses, Dick's Sporting Goods reported actual overall sales growth in the third and fourth quarters of 2018. And they attributed that growth to strong performance in the other categories such as apparel, footwear, team sports, etc. So what was the customer's reaction, the reputation, the brand image? How was all of that affected? Again, planting your flagpole. Ed Stack, the CEO, received both praise and criticism for his leadership on this issue, which further heightened the public profile of the company. Think about that for a minute. Even bad press is good press. That's been a moniker for how long? But praise and criticism. He planted his flagpole. Of course he's going to get praise from the camp he planted his flagpole in. And of course he's going to expect criticism from the camp that he didn't. Received mixed reaction from customers, some praising the company for taking a stand on a critical social issue. I'm using air quotes on that too. I'll get to that. Potentially increasing loyalty among those customers who do support stricter gun control measures. Significantly impacted the brand image, positioning Dick's as, and again, more air quotes, socially responsible retailer willing to take bold steps on controversial issues. It's not his money. Flip that over, the decision alienated some customers who are opposed to gun control, leading to boycotts, negative feedback, protests. It's led some to flat refuse to ever step foot into Dick's Sporting Goods ever again. And after taking such a hard political and social stance, Dick's had to come up with a way to combat that revenue loss. So they decided to repurpose the floor space previously allocated to firearms and ammunition to other product lines. And it did improve the profitability because they were focusing on higher margin categories. The company also emphasized its commitment to promoting youth sports and other community initiatives, which that is something I actually like. But then they say that they're aligning their brand more closely with family-friendly and socially conscious values. That one's going to come back up front. After the announcement, initially, the stock price obviously saw some volatility. I mean, we're talking financial performance at this point. That reflects your investor uncertainty about the potential and political long-term impact. Lucky for them, despite the initial dip, it did recover over time. Did it demonstrate resilience in the other business areas and continue to report positive growth in non-hunting categories? Think about that for a minute. Positive growth in non-hunting categories. Of course you're going to have growth in non-hunting categories. Outside of camouflage apparel, you no longer have a hunting category. So the other categories have to pick up the slack. It's a no-brainer. In the fiscal year following the decision, they did report an increase in same-store sales. For example, in 2019, the company reported comparable store sales increase of 3.7%, indicating a near full recovery. Focus on e-commerce, private brands, strong performance in categories like footwear, apparel, team sports helped mitigate the impact of that firearms decision. So let's summarize that all up, because I just threw a whole lot of information at you all at the same time. So while Dick's did experience an initial financial decline following their decision to change the firearm policy, the company was able to adapt and eventually report growth in other areas. The initial same-store sales, I told you, try saying that 5 times fast. The initial same-store sales decline of 4% in 2018 and the slight decrease in total sales from 8.6 in 2017 to 8.4 billion in 2018 highlight that short-term impact. However, strategic shifts and focus on more profitable categories did enable the company to recover and grow in subsequent years. Overall, you could call that a success. They successfully navigated the controversy by leveraging its strengths in other product areas. Let's take a look at the Wall Street Journal and V-Chart's numbers on this particular issue. So this is the 10-year look mapped out by a year. Otherwise, it would be insane to look at. If you notice the volume of trades numbers from 2017 volume 764 million trades, almost 765. 2018, 771 million, 700,624, give or take. 2019, 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24, nowhere near the volume of trades. But yet the stock price is going up. So that led me to believe, I wonder if they're buying back stock. Yarp. They spent a considerable amount over the next, just going from January to October, January of 18 to October of 19. So January 31st, 18, 42 million worth of stock they bought back. April of 2018, 107 million. July 2018, 73 million. October 18, another 107 million, almost 108. January, another 33 million. April, 107 million. July, 159 million. October, almost another 100 million. If we look at the buyback numbers, Dick's, while saying they've recovered, volume of trades and the fact that they're having to buy back, not having to, but they're choosing to buy back. I mean, even the sales numbers don't match. They lost 4% year over year in same store sales. It took a year to get back and recover 3.7% of that. Imagine if they didn't make that decision. What if they hadn't removed firearms and ammunition from the shelves? That following year would have seen a 3.7% increase overall, meaning their shareholders would have made $192.6 million instead of losing $200 million and only recovering $192.6 million of that back a year later for those that actually stuck around. What made this so politically polarizing is the decision of one company officer to make a hardline political statement without instead devising a longer-term strategy to get out of the firearms and ammunition business without an almost instant $200 million loss. I mean, the whole reason companies go publicly traded is to get outside funding from shareholders. Buying back your own shares, I mean, part of what that does is artificially increase the stock price or preserve it, depending. But if you're buying it back, you're basically limiting how much more outside funding you can get. Yeah, it may raise it on the short term, but when you start selling them back, it's going to drop again. There's less common stock available. Now, Investopedia had a wonderful article on this. Let me jump to it real quick. The reasons listed for stock buybacks: reducing the cost of capital, ownership consolidation, which goes back to the less common stock available and therefore fewer people to share the earnings with, preserving stock prices. That's the artificial price increase due to the lack of availability of common stock, supply and demand. You now have less supply. Undervaluation and boosting its key financial ratios. Again, personal opinion. Everything I say or print is personal opinion. If we look at the chart, we look at the buybacks, we see that they're trying to boost that key financial ratio so that they don't show the rest of the world that they haven't fully recovered from that. And they won't. I don't see how they can. You cannot take a hardline stance and not expect half the population, because it's pretty much a 50-50 split here in the U.S., not to tell you to go pound sand somewhere. Last on the example list is our friends at Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light. In 2023, Bud Light faced significant controversy and financial repercussions following a marketing decision involving a transgender influencer, Dylan Mulvaney. Here's a little bit of the details and impact. So the background of that, Bud Light partnered with Dylan Mulvaney as part of a marketing campaign for the March Madness basketball tournament. Partnership included personalized Bud Light cans featuring Mulvaney's image, which she promoted on social media to all of her followers. Millions of them. The campaign very, very quickly sparked backlash from a segment of the public and conservative commentators who opposed Bud Light's association with a transgender influencer. High-profile critics and consumers called for a boycott of Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch as a whole, leading to significant public relations crises. So following the backlash, Bud Light sales experienced a very sharp decline. We're talking 12 points in 2 months, give or take. In the weeks immediately after the campaign, sales volumes dropped by as much as 26% compared to the same period in the previous fiscal year. And according to Nielsen data, Bud Light sales continued to suffer, with the brand experiencing double-digit declines in sales volume for several consecutive weeks. You're going to see the chart on it very shortly. Bud Light's market share also decreased as competitors like Coors Light and Miller Lite started seeing sales increases. Those two companies benefited from the backlash. By mid-2023, Bud Light has lost its position as the top-selling beer in the U.S., a title it's held for many, many years. Anheuser-Busch InBev is the full name of the company, but Anheuser-Busch's stock price was obviously affected, declined about 20% in the months following the incident. Represented billions of dollars in lost market capitalization. I am having trouble speaking today. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to take a quick drink of water. So what were the long-term impacts? I'm going to be honest, still being assessed. It's barely been a year. Company is still facing challenges regaining consumer trust, stabilizing sales. I mean, they're implementing strategic changes to mitigate the impact, including adjustments to its marketing strategies, trying to reconnect with that core consumer base. And they did make some efforts to address the backlash, releasing statements to clarify the intent behind the campaign and emphasizing the company's commitment to inclusivity. Great. You can be inclusive. Enjoy that. You'll understand why later. Company also made changes in its marketing leadership, suspending the 2 marketing VPs that made the decision. Let's take a look at that chart, because that chart will explain a lot. There's April, $66 a share. 54, 55, the end of May, beginning of June. It's just now starting to come back up. Finally. So now we've gone through all the data. We've gone through the facts. We've looked at all of the information. Now we get to the opinion piece of this. The tangent. The what's going on in this insane brain of mine. And why I say politics has no business in business. I'm probably going to show my age on this one. And yes, that's gray you see in the beard. Remember when the 3 taboo topics at work were sex, religion, and politics? I really believe we need to get back to that. Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby are both privately held. Their owners, the Cathy family, the Green family, they were the ones that felt the financial impact of those decisions. That's their prerogative. Anheuser-Busch, InBev, and Dick's Sporting Goods, on the other hand, those are publicly traded. Their officers don't work for Dick's. They work for the shareholders, not themselves. Ed Stack, CEO of Dick's, didn't lose $200 million. The shareholders did. Do all of the shareholders endorse or share the same gun control stance as Mr. Stack? Do all the shareholders of Anheuser-Busch share the same tolerance around same-sex or transgender individuals? Anheuser-Busch lost 20%. That's $26 billion, yes, with a B, billion, on that decision. Did Alyssa, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce her last name. Heinerscheid, maybe? If she sees this and I mispronounce it again, I'm sorry. Or Daniel Blake, the 2 VPs, VP of Marketing, Group VP of Marketing, respectively. Did they lose the $26 billion? No, the shareholders did. In the case of Dick's Sporting Goods, it took them nearly a year to recover. Anheuser-Busch has been just over a year, but they're just now coming back. Like within the last couple of weeks, barely coming back. And with Anheuser-Busch's decision, all they had to do was a commercial that showed same-sex couples, interracial couples, transgender couples, heterosexual couples, and everything in between. Not just couples, just, people meeting up after work somewhere. And just say, this Bud's for everyone. Problem solved. Probably still would have ruffled a few feathers, but nowhere near the magnitude that going completely one direction did. So why are these officers, these company officers, all four of them in the examples, making these polarizing, virtue-signaling, divisive decisions? That's what I cannot figure out. I mean, I said it earlier, any press is good press. That's been the usual go-to moniker. But a $26 billion hit, or hell, even a $200 million hit, that would 100% make me think twice. Now, obviously, this particular topic has absolutely nothing to do with cyber and information security. But it does have everything to do with business. I mentioned in one of my previous episodes that one of the mentalities and mindsets that I come into an organization with is that is my organization. I will defend it by any means necessary, even if I have to defend it from itself. Every employee should be thinking with the risks versus rewards mentality. Look at the Anheuser-Busch decision. How many employees lost their jobs because 2 marketing VPs didn't look at the risk versus reward? Answer that one. You'll win a hand clap. Because I haven't been able to answer it. These examples would be situations where I would have gone to those marketing teams, owners, CEOs. I've done it. And laid out exactly how the decisions are going to be received. If you understand someone's psychology, you know what they're going to do. Trust me. If these organizations had a me, putting that in air quotes too, on their staff, maybe they wouldn't have taken such a financial hit. I mean, as security professionals, isn't part of our jobs to help protect the company's reputation? Every time an organization gets breached, it's not just a financial hit, but a reputational one as well. It's part of our jobs as security professionals to show the risks involved. But it's not just security. It goes back to many of the talks, articles, previous episodes I've done. Security is an organizational concern, not a tech one. And yes, I'm looking dead at the camera when I say that one. It is an organizational do I need to say it louder for those in the back? It is an organizational problem, not a tech one. These decisions that could harm that reputation would have been a great example of protecting the organization from itself and protecting the organization's reputation. Maybe ask your own workforce how they would receive a decision like the ones we've highlighted today. Think about that. I mean, businesses today, whether they embrace a DEI policy or not, are pushing for more diversity, which is great. That diversity is a perfect place for companies to get an idea of the real-world impact of potential decisions like the ones we've talked about today before those decisions make impacts that affect the bottom line. Each employee, each department, they're going to have a different way of looking at those decisions. And it will give businesses a stronger idea of the impact these decisions will have. Doing something like polling your workforce just might keep you off the here's what not to do list on some schmuck's podcast. Yep, I said it. Sorry, we're on a little tangent there again. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah. Just to state again, we don't know the financial ramifications from Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby because they're privately held. We know Dick's and Anheuser-Busch / Bud Light, whatever, because they're publicly traded. And as I said in my tangent, as employees, we need to be aware of the risks involved with these types of decisions. We need the voice that asks, are we sure we want to do this? We're the phone-a-friend. We're the lifeline. I understand some decisions were made based on core values that have existed since the company's inception. Hobby Lobby, Chick-fil-A, etc. But we need to ask, with the changing world around us, how do we feel about staying locked to those values? Or are we ready to grow and change with the world? There was a quote that I saw the other day that said, some people are not here to evolve. They're here to show us what happens when we don't. That's a powerful statement. And on the other side, we need to ask, are we sure that the political and social values of one or even two individuals should have this much of an impact? Two individuals cost an organization $26 billion. Does this mean that we need to be more, and I hesitate to use this word, but it's the best I can come up with, more insistent in spotlighting the risks of these type of decisions? Because the publicly traded organizations have a larger footprint and therefore more to lose? I say no. I say we need to maintain the same level of insistence and vigilance regardless of public versus private. These risks need to see the light of day, not ignored like the 4 examples we've highlighted today. Businesses exist to make money. Risks jeopardize that. Spotlight the risks so you don't lose that money. So the business rule should be this, in my mind. Does your gender identity, skin color, choice of sexual partner, religion, personal political beliefs, or anything else like that affect your work output or performance? If no, then leave it at the door. It's irrelevant. No one needs to know who I sleep with. No one needs to know my religious practices. No one needs to know how I feel politically. None of those things affect work performance, and more importantly, most people don't care. It's only when you're seeking input about a potentially polarizing decision should any of that be a factor. Everything else, leave it at the door. When it does start affecting work performance, like making a political statement while playing with somebody else's money, as with Dick's Sporting Goods, Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light, that's when it's gone too far. That's when it is affecting your work performance. Let's dive just a hair deeper into that. Marketing's job, and I'm going to pick on Anheuser-Busch on this one. Marketing's job is to get the organization's name out there to drive revenue. Pissing off your target demographic? Not a smart business move. A CEO, this one's going back to Dick's, forcing his personal political beliefs onto an entire organization and alienating half the country. Cost the company money. Not a smart business move. What I'm trying to say on this one is that the Anheuser-Busch marketing group, those 2 VPs, let gender identity affect work output and performance. Ed Stack's strong beliefs on gun control affected work performance, and both of those affected the bottom line. That's when things went too far. Truett Cathy's family being so hardline I'm happy to see that they're shifting gears over to less divisive things. Leave it at the door. Leave the politics at the door and let's get back to actually doing our job, shall we? I don't care who you take to bed. I don't care who or what you worship. No one else should either. Those are private decisions. So I'm going to close this out by repeating something a friend once told me. And I know this is going to ruffle even more feathers because it's 100% true. Which is probably why it ruffled feathers, because the truth is sometimes brutal. Starting the quote here. First of all, if your entire identity revolves around what's in your pants and whose pants you're trying to get into, you do not have an identity. You have turned yourself into nothing more than a sex object. Your gender preference, sexual partner, skin color, religion, political leanings, etc., all of it. It's like a penis. It's fine if you have one. It's fine if you don't. It's fine if you want one. It's fine if you don't. However, like a penis, the moment you take it out and start waving it in everyone's faces, that's when it becomes a problem. End quote. Think about that. This is why politics has no business in business. Politics is the penis. Don't wave it in everybody's faces. That's when it becomes a problem. And I just showed 4 examples of how. Business exists to make money. Let's put it away. Let's zip it up. Leave it at the door. Let's get to work trying to rejuvenate an economy that has, for all intents and purposes, declared war on businesses. Highest inflation in living memory. I say living memory because, well, there may still be a few people out there. Anywho, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Caffeine, Sarcasm, and Insanity Podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out. Hell, use smoke signals if you have to. And I'll see you next time, and I promise I'll get back to tech-related topics on the next one. Cheers, you beautiful, crazy people. See you next time. Little bit of a post-rendered edit here. It was brought to my attention that I might need to elaborate for just a second. So Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby's decisions were ideological decisions. Dick's Sporting Goods was purely political. Anheuser-Busch Bud Light was a social issue. There was a time when these used to be separate things. But with our current political climate, however, that's created an environment where ideology, religious views, social issues, etc., are all lumped together as political stances, and I'm using air quotes again. I hope that clears up any confusion. Cheers again, you beautiful, crazy people. I'll climb off the soapbox and see you next time. Cheers.